What's up YouTube, it's just to see you back with another video, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a compare and contrast video on the Kyosho Turbo Scorpion and the Kyosho Javelin. Before I get to that, after having built these two, which I thought was honestly a very enjoyable build, they were extremely nice kits, I've started having thoughts about getting a third. And that third would be the Kyosho Optima Mid, which is a four-wheel drive buggy, belt drive, similar to the Javelin, except the mid part of it means the motor is in the middle of the chassis, roughly kind of like right here on the wheelbase. And after having built these two and seeing the very unique suspension setup on the Turbo Scorpion, the unique belt drive system and how it goes from the rear wheel, the motor from the rear wheels to make it four-wheel drive using the belt drive, has me wondering about the Optima Mid. So, don't be surprised if that joins the channel. I'm going to leave it there. I don't have a time frame. So yeah, just something I've been thinking about, and we'll see where that goes. Anyway, now getting to the actual meat and potatoes of the video. So, first thing I've noticed is they both have a little bit of a cage look. So we have like the back part here, the little light guard here, and then the front part coming down on the Turbo Scorpion. The Javelin's all cage, basically. That's all there is. Nice big wings in the back. The wing sizes are different. I'm going to get a tape measure really quick. Actually, calipers. Oops. Okay. Zeroed out. Inches. Okay, so on the Turbo Scorpion, it is 5.15 inches wide, and on the Javelin, it is 5.43 inches wide. So it's actually wider on the Javelin, which I was not expecting that, just due to the fact that it's so much deeper, it looks shorter. And then the depth of it, 2.45 inches, and on the Turbo Scorpion, 1.88 inches. So that's just something very interesting. I'm gonna do a little bit of putting the body on for the Turbo Scorpion really quick, just to give it a little bit more of its realistic stance. Not putting it all the way on, that's good enough. And if I square up the wheelbases and the back, you can see that the Turbo Scorpion's wheelbase is a little bit over a quarter inch longer. Based on where the center of the tires are. It's about there versus about there. So that's something very interesting. I thought they would be... Honestly, I really didn't know. For some reason, I was thinking they'd be the exact same wheelbase. Width-wise... Wow, they are nearly identical width-wise. That's about as good as I can line them up. Although that does make something more obvious, that the rear track on the Turbo Scorpion is narrower than the front track. But on the Javelin, it's basically a square setup. Overall length, because of the bumper on the Turbo Scorpion, it is longer. And it has that larger rear wing, so it does stick back just a smidgen farther. The little cage around this back motor part is below the wing. The wing sticks out past it. The tires are very two-wheel drive-esque on the Turbo Scorpion, with block tires in the rear and then steering tires that are skinnier in the front. Most of the two-wheel drive vehicles today, stadium trucks and buggies that is, come like that. And then on four-wheel drive, all the tires are the same, which is, again, very similar to stadium trucks and buggies of today on the Javelin. The Turbo Scorpion does come with light kit buckets, but no light kit, and you can purchase one separately. I purchased it on Amazon for $18, I think. And so it kind of seems expensive for a light kit if you ask me, but it has a little bit of a module in there in order to like change whenever you flip the controller, as you would have seen in the Scorpion video a couple weeks ago. So that might be one of the reasons why. I will say though that the shocks are different sizes on the Turbo Scorpion and the Javelin, although they're the exact same style. And actually the fronts might be the same. Between the two cars, but the backs are definitely significantly longer on the Javelin. The biggest difference between the two vehicles, besides the four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive, would be the suspension setup. So, on the Turbo Scorpion, it's got this really like swing arm mount front and rear, which it's really just a cool mechanism. I'll give it up closer so you can see how it pivots. And also this linkage is really interesting because that's what actually keeps the tire pointing straight the entire time. So that even when you're going over bumps, it actually has that nice no camber look. And on the back, it's very standard swing arm. If you're familiar with swing arms at all, or yeah, swing arms. Trailing arm is motorcycle, swing arm is car. Just a really cool setup there. And it's these little posts here, one here and then one there, where the pin runs through, which actually holds the swing arm. Very unique. And then the axle setup runs from the differential out to the swing arm and the back of it, which again, just very unique setup. You don't see that on any of the modern cars that are like the Javelin. And the Javelin is very standard independent suspension. It uses what pretty much anything this vehicle and newer uses for suspension setup. The only real difference would be on the front side of the shocks where they actually mount. It mounts to the C carrier or the C hub rather than the actual A arm itself. According to the instructions, obviously you can move this little ball end. It's just a 2.5 millimeter, one of those two, and screw it in either of these spots. Same thing on the back. You could just move it and then screw this in here, here, or here. On the Javelin, you can adjust the slipper clutch right here. There is a little nut for it. But the Turbo Scorpion, no such thing. If you want to adjust the slipper clutch, it's right here. And you have to take this cover off. And I think I said in my initial video that I thought the shock towers in the back were the same, but they are definitely not. They are definitely not. As far as looks go, I don't know that there's one that I like the look of better, because I did buy these cars mostly for the way they looked in the first place. So take that with a grain of salt. I really like the cage buggy look on the Javelin, but I also like all the sticker vomit almost that I did on the Turbo Scorpion. So give or take, I think they both look great. I also really like the unique suspension setup on the Turbo Scorpion because of its uniqueness. That's another one of the reasons I bought the vehicle, was because instead of getting the Ultima, which is another two-wheel drive buggy, more aligned with the year model that this one came out, that one was just regular independent suspension like the Javelin and most other modern vehicles. So that's why I didn't get it and instead went with this one. Kind of last second. I did a little bit of research up to when I was going to buy it and decided that it wasn't unique enough. And so I bought the Turbo Scorpion instead. I do have the lights run here on the Turbo Scorpion up through the cage on the top, because in the instructions they wanted me to drill a hole like right here on the body, but I didn't want to do that on both sides. To keep the look cleaner, Instead, I just mounted all the lights running through the back here because I had to drill cut a bigger hole in the back in order to fit the antenna line and the on-off switch, because the ESC I was using was a bit taller than the one it recommended stock, and so the piece of plastic that they sit on has been raised up quite significantly to clear the ESC fan. I guess another big difference would be the way something just fell. Oh, the clip that holds the light on here. That's what fell. I found it. Let me get it put back on. It's just a plastic clip. There's nothing really fancy to it, so I'm not entirely surprised that it fell off by my hand brushing it. So, there you go. All that gone. It's all done now. Yeah, battery tray. The battery tray here on the Turbo Scorpion, that's a little body pin, and then this piece pulls up and off, and that's how you get to the battery. Which is not going to come out right now. Whatever. And then it just slips in the front and clips down in the back. Whatever. Whereas on the Turbo Scorpion, let me grab a battery. The battery goes here on the side. Like so. And you're supposed to run these Velcro straps around the battery. Like here, sitting on top of this thing. But because the battery is so tight, like, yeah, it didn't move. So I don't really need the Velcro straps for this vehicle. If I was using a smaller battery, like say this thing, this little LiPo here, which is what they kind of recommend you use, then yeah, I can see how you would need the Velcro straps, although I don't really see how they would prevent it from sliding out sideways. But anyway, that's just something a little bit unique on how it runs. So, oh yeah, the motor's in the back. So both of these are rear motor mounted, but as you can tell, the Turbo Scorpion has this motor guard around back, which I actually had to end up running the motor wires around, because if I didn't, they were completely hitting up against this cage right here, and I couldn't really run the motor wires as I needed to. Versus on the Turbo Scorpion, it just has these two bars that are part of the kind of exoskeleton look that it has, which fortunately were just barely inside enough that I could mount the motor wires without having to jam them up against this piece of plastic. And if I needed to, I could also rotate the motor a little bit farther around, forward or backwards, so that they were sticking out more sideways, giving me better access. Oh, another unique thing about the Turbo Scorpion was where the battery leads go. So there's this little like notch in the chassis underneath where the ESC sits, and the leads for the battery, if they are, I think these are 3.75 millimeter bullets, you can run them underneath the chassis one at a time, and then all three of them will kind of stick together like this, and they can connect to the motor that way, which the leads were like the perfect length for that between the ESC and motor I used. As you can tell, there's not a whole lot of extra room there. So that was super cool. I know that on Tomley RC, whenever he built his chassis, he just ran them out back here. He like made an extra cut in the body, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to follow the way that it was originally designed. So that's why I did it that way. I really need to get the battery out of this thing. Let me see if I can get the battery out real quick and the body off so that I can show y'all underneath there. Oh yeah, on the Javelin, the ESC I used, I couldn't put the guy there because it has to go in a different spot than where it was originally designed. That should be good enough. That's why I couldn't get the battery out. And we're out. Finally, that took way too long. Okay, so now y'all can see the ESC and the electronics down here, how the chassis is laid out. Really long, just steering rod going straight to the way the... this is the servo saver right here on the Kyosho Turbo Scorpion. The extra spacers here in the red, those came in the kit, but they were not designed for this. They were actually just unused parts. So I got my own custom length screw with the same thread pitch and screwed it into the base and just put those little, I'm using them as standoffs, so that's what I'm going to call them, standoffs, to space out how far it needs to go in order to clear the ESC, which I don't know if y'all can tell, but it barely clears the ESC. It's the perfect height. So that is that. I am using these little Deans to Traxxas connector adapters on the battery because Traxxas battery and I didn't feel like switching the connector. Or Traxxas plug battery and I didn't feel like switching the connector. The servo I was originally going to use in this vehicle, I didn't because I think some of the gears are stripped on it and it's plastic geared and I don't really feel like replacing them. So I use this one. So I think this servo is a 6 kilogram, whereas the one in here is a 3 kilogram. Not much of a difference. Also, the light kit comes with its extra port if you want to run extra lights. There is obviously no place to put extra lights on this vehicle. I guess potentially you could put like a light bucket there and there if you wanted to purchase more, and maybe one here, but I honestly don't really know what use they would be, since driving this forward is all that I really plan on doing. Obviously, if I have a incident, then I will have to reverse it, but the forward lights are plenty for me. So, and here's the underside look at the body. If it'll get unstuck, there we go. As you can see, there's no paint on it, which I mentioned in the video, but I don't really think it needs paint, as I was saying, because I think it just looks cool the way it is. Now time to try and get everything. Unfortunately, the antenna tube does stick up past this, so whenever I need to try and get the body on, I have to bend it around and then bend it back, but that's not a big deal. Also, I hot glued the ESC switch on instead of using the foam pad, because the foam double-sided tape pad, I had to take it off and remount the ESC because it wasn't in the right location, and it's a whole fiasco, but the hot gluing is going to work for this application, so it's not that big a deal. Alright, let me try and get the body in some semblance of back on. I think that qualifies. Alright, now we're kind of better look at the Turbo Scorpion. So the Turbo Scorpion, I mounted the ESC right here, even though that's where the body cover is supposed to go. The receiver's in the right spot, but because of the ESC's height, where you're supposed to put it, which is right here, it's too tall and too wide in order to fit in that area, and so that's why I had to put it up here instead. Which is unfortunate because the driver figure is pretty cool, but I didn't want to paint him either, so oopsie, he's not getting painted. And he's not even going on the vehicle. The front of the body, or the dual driver figure, there's a hole right here, which sits right here on the chassis with this little body clip. You take it off and then slide it on. And then in the back, there's these two little U-shaped cutouts, which sit in a little silver washer right here underneath where my pinky is. And there's one on the other side too, right here. So that's how that works. And then also with the body mounting system, let me see if I can just take the cage off really quick. I have tab, you'll see it better. I don't know that I'm going to be able to take the cage fully off because the ESC switch is mounted right here, which I think it looks really cool right there, but it also kind of prevents you from taking the cage off very far because wire length. And these two body pins are actually extremely annoying to get off. So I'm afraid that if I do try and get it off, I'm just going to rip out the rubber pieces that they're mounted on. Just a really inconvenient location. Thanks a lot, Kyosho. Yep. Got it. Okay, there's both of them. And I've got them mounted to this body tethering system, which is also orange, so it matches the rest of the vehicle. Oh, and then the front one, obviously. So, and then got to pop these off. Easier said than done. Okay, now I can take this off. Kind of same idea as the Turbo Scorpion. I can't take it all the way off because of wires, but there's what it looks like underneath, and these are the two holes that are the mounting points for the top cage. So that's what goes there. Now you can kind of see the body pins better. Just a little mounted. And these were like the perfect shape, but as you can see, it's already kind of starting to rip. So that's why I'm trying to be careful with it. These are more so that if I ever take the cage off, I don't lose the body pins than actually being able to grab it, because I don't fully trust that. But yeah, there's also a better look at where the body is supposed to go there in the front, but obviously it can't because the ESC is too tall. This guy's not very big. He's pretty shallow. So, the belt drive system, you can see this is the top cover of it right here. And it's really unique because the spur gear goes into the transmission gear, or there's transmission gears here in the back. And then connected to that differential in the back is the belt drive system, which then connects to the differential in the front. Just the belt connects directly to the differential. That's what it spins. So I thought that was pretty cool and how it was designed. The servo arm is the servo linkage here in the front is much more typical of a modern day servo setup. The steering Ackerman bar and then the two linkages to just provide extra support. Again, just pretty much the exact same as what we see nowadays. Let me get the body just lightly placed back on for the time being as I do just kind of a final recap of the main differences. Because the vehicles are really just, there's no similarities at all between the two. So this is more of a contrast video than a compare video. Okay, never mind. Got to do the back of the buggy first, then the front. There we go. That's on enough. Okay, so the last big difference that I've noticed between the two vehicles is the bumpers, which I don't know how I didn't mention this earlier when I was talking about suspension because it's just right there in the front. But the bumper on the Turbo Scorpion, while they're both mounted to the chassis rails, this one, it's only got a little bit of give. It's not very big. If you hit something, at least you can hit the bumper first if you hit it square on, but doesn't really protect the tires at all, whereas the bumper on the Kyosho, the Turbo Scorpion, lot of flex everywhere. It's just nice and flexible. And it actually goes out in front of the tires, so if you do hit something, you're gonna hit the bumper first before you hit the tires, which is nice. Smart design. As you can tell, they both are a little bit dirty. I have run them once before, and as far as like being able to control it goes, wasn't exactly fair because I was driving the Turbo Scorpion while I was wet and the Javelin while it was dry, but the Javelin was definitely easier to control with that four-wheel drive. But the Turbo Scorpion didn't have the cogging at low speeds like the Javelin did. So the Javelin might need to be geared down a little bit. Oh, but the Javelin does have an adjustable motor mount. So like if you want to use a different pinion, you can. Whereas the Turbo Scorpion, you can't. There might be some alternate like transmission gears, since there's a set of 3. You've got your spur gear, your transmission gear, and then your pinion gear, your transmission gear, then your spur gear. Whereas on like most vehicles, especially like the Traxxas vehicles, it's just pinion spur. That there's nothing to it. So you might be able to get something which changes some kind of ratio between these two, and in order to like have the gears still mesh. But other than that, there's none that came in the kit if you want to change the gear ratio. Whereas on the Turbo Scorpion, you can move the motor mount back and like kind of swing it back and forth, like on most modern most modern motor mounts, in order to adjust the pinion gear mesh. So that works out really well. Okay, that has been my comparison between the Turbo Scorpion and the Javelin. Both of the vehicles I think look super cool, and I'm super happy with the way they turned out. Minus a little bit of a cogging issue with this vehicle, but that's not that big a deal. I'm going to enjoy driving them. Oh, actually, one more thing. The tire size in the front, the Turbo Scorpion has bigger front and rear tires. That's interesting. And the rubber compound on the Turbo Scorpion is significantly softer than on the... they both flex just the same because there's no foam insert. But the rubber compound is definitely softer on the Turbo Scorpion, which would probably be better on slightly stickier tracks or more like muddy tracks, whereas this one would probably be better on harder packed dirt tracks. Okay, that was my video comparing and contrasting the two, Turbo Scorpion and the Javelin. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. If y'all were curious about anything and I didn't cover it in the video, please let me know in the comments below. And then that's all for today. I'll see you in the next video.